Hi, welcome back to another reading from Hot Flash Divas. I'm Shirley Garrett, the author, and today we're going to read chapter 33, Swinging into My New Life. I hope you enjoy this fiction novel. During my next West Coast swing lesson, Susan asked, "Are you going to the East Coast swing dance this Saturday?" "What's East Coast swing?" I stopped practicing in front of the studio's wall-sized mirror and looked at her. "It's easier than West Coast swing. You should go." Her plump roundness jiggled as she wiggled her hips at the end of a sugar push. "I'll go if you'll go. Mark, my ex has the kids this weekend." "I don't know. I don't have anything to wear. Todd was boring. My idea of entertainment was watching television." "Yuck! Couch potato?" "No, he was a recliner slug," I laughed. Everyone was gathering for the lesson to begin. Shane behaved as expected. Honey and molasses for the young girls and battery acid toward the rest. After receiving my dose of criticism, I thought, that's it. There has to be another dance studio somewhere in Huntsville. After the lesson, Susan sat next to me while we changed shoes. Bright-eyed and excited, she said, "We should go to this dance. Have you seen James Pattern, the lead singer of the band?" "Never heard of him." "I'd love to lick him all over like a lollipop. If I could lure him out to my minivan, I'd teach him how to play rock and roll." She grinned as she tugged off a dance shoe. I tried to visualize her red minivan rocking in a parking lot. That van was a child transport vehicle full of toys, athletic equipment, and the remains of too many dinners unwrapped and consumed en route to the next lesson or sporting event. I glanced over at Susan and shook my head. "I've seen the inside of your van, Susan. It's hard to imagine it as the scene of a love fest." Susan stopped fiddling with the strap of her other shoe and cocked her head as if considering my statement. "Who's putting on this dance?" I asked. Puffing from her exertions, Susan asked, "Huntsville Swing Dance, I think." "I'll think about it." "Good, I'll see you there." Back at home, I checked out their website. A single-step swing lesson was on the schedule for Saturday afternoon and a group triple-step swing class before the dance that same night. The band advertised to play was James Pattern's band out of Nashville, Tennessee. I wanted to attend, and I didn't. I had nothing to wear for such an occasion. The only solution was to go shopping. After all, I am a female. Scene break. Entering a clothing store at the mall, I fine-tuned my outstanding bargain radar. Bing, 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 bing. A clearance rack hidden in the back came into view. The word clearance makes my heart leap with excitement. I do love a bargain. My maternal grandmother was Scottish, so thriftiness runs in my DNA. I found a cute swirly-skirted black dress for $10 that was an eye-catcher. It was on a clearance because the tag said it was an 8 when it was a 4. I called all the divas, but each had plans for the night. I decided to go anyway. I marshaled my courage and marched into the Knights of Columbus Hall for my first Huntsville Swing event. I've come to think of this as my coming out party. I pulled open the door and looked for Susan, thinking it would be easier to walk in with someone. She was nowhere in sight. "Late as usual. That woman will be late for her own cremation," I mumbled. I paid the admittance fee and stepped through the doorway into my new life. The large rectangular room had beige linoleum floor, beige wallpaper, and a drop ceiling. The band was busy setting up in the far corner. After spotting the guy I guessed was James Pattern, I could see why Susan had wicked thoughts about rock and roll in her minivan. Hot though he was, I had made a rule to avoid musicians. Too many groupies. I also avoided lawyers and physicians as possible romantic interests. Gina had asked me just a week earlier, "What do you have against doctors and attorneys? I find men in those professions to be both intelligent and accomplished." I find those professions to be all-consuming occupations littered with workaholics who are prone to loose zippers. I'd crossed my arms and glared at her. Since my divorce, I've added morticians to my list. I eased into the room and looked up. A large mirror ball hung from the center of the ceiling. Just then, the lights dimmed and the colored can lights created pools of color on the neutral floor. The mirror ball twirled, spilling moving diamonds of light over every surface of the room. I was hooked. I had mirror ball fever. For me, it may be incurable. I sat and continued to watch the band set up for the gig while I waited for Susan. She arrived a few minutes later, hauling a purse big enough for a weekend stay at a resort. Susan stepped through the doorway and stopped, her gaze riveted on the bandleader as he leaned over to plug in an amp. His ass, encased in tight jeans, acted like a tractor beam, pulling her in his direction. Susan's tongue circled her lips. I held my breath. I was sure that any second she would lean over and bite him, leaving her mark. Susan's hand reached out as if it had a mind of its own. He stood and whirled around. Whipping her hand back, she smiled. "Hi, Susan. Glad you could make it tonight." James reached out and pumped her hand. "Well, you know I'm your #1 fan." Susan's face flushed pink. "The guys and I appreciate the loyalty of our fans. If you'll excuse me, we need to do a sound check." "Oh, yes, of course." She backed away, grinning. I shook my head. This guy's a pro. She'll never play rock and roll in the back of her van with him. Susan plopped into the chair next to me. "Isn't he luscious?" She reached inside her giant purse and pulled out her dance shoes and a folding fan. Her encounter appeared to have triggered a hot flash. "I thought you were going to bite his butt." I leaned back to see her reaction. Her head jerked in my direction. "Was I that obvious?" "You were drooling." "He heats me up every time I lay eyes on him." She fanned herself with gusto. "I'm about to self-combust." The band started playing and people filled the tables. I had to admit the musicians were good. The number of single men who asked me to dance surprised me. I'm not a club person, so I wondered where I could meet some nice men. I relaxed and had fun. I danced almost every dance and decided the only way to get a break was to relieve my bloated bladder. I wasn't sure it could withstand one more whirl around the dance floor. My current dance partner, Brent Power, steered me toward my table. He was an attractive man and a good dancer. I thanked him, sped out of the room into the hallway, and ducked into the ladies' room. Hold on, I coaxed my bladder to wait until I could peel down my pantyhose. Lately, it seemed that my bladder had a mind of its own. The minute I spotted a toilet, it wanted to release. The door to the stall next to me opened and closed. "What are you doing?" Susan's voice drifted from the next stall in that peculiar echo typical of bathrooms. "What do you mean?" Surely she doesn't expect a pee or poop report. I'm not one of her children. "What are you doing that's making these men salivate over you?" "No one's salivating over me. I'm just dancing." "They aren't asking me to dance that much." Her tone sounded indignant. I didn't answer at first. I was busy wrestling my pantyhose over my hips. I tried to construct a reply that wouldn't offend my new friend, but none came to mind. In truth, Susan was 30 pounds overweight. Fat formed rolling hills on the landscape of her midsection. Her tight, clingy clothes only amplified the problem. If Letitia saw Susan, she would take her under wing and drag her to a clothing store. I flushed, left the stall, and was slathering soap on my hands when Susan came out of her stall and tromped toward the sink. So, what's your secret, Phoenix? Fresh meat. What? Susan's eyes widened as she turned to look at me. I'm fresh meat. Someone new. It's like when a new mall opens. Everyone wants to be the first to shop there. She frowned as she rinsed her hands under the flow of water. Snatching a towel, she dried them as she eyed me from stem to stern. Maybe. It doesn't hurt that you're so damned pretty and skinny. I was that skinny once before I had 3 kids and menopause tackled me. I winced. I had a hard time thinking of myself as pretty. I feel more comfortable with the designation cute. I'm sure there are guys out there that think I'm too skinny. I reached for a towel and dried my hands. Susan guffawed. If you find them, send them my way. I tossed my towel in the trash. I don't think we should define ourselves by people's opinions of our bodies, since they only think with their dicks most of the time. Testosterone-driven fool, said Susan, grinning. The smile melted from her face. I'm never going to get James Pattern into the back of my van, am I? Why would you want to risk getting a sexually transmitted disease from a musician? Do you think you're the only one after him? The man's a groupie magnet. Susan tossed her paper towel in the trash. I hadn't thought of that. I do think you could dress to better enhance your assets. Susan shot me a menacing look. What do you mean? For example, that color doesn't suit your complexion. It makes you look pale. Susan walked back to the mirror and examined her visage. She raised her chin, trying to make the second one disappear. What do you suggest? I have a friend who's a fabulous person with clothes and knows how to ferret out sales. She popped a hand on her hip and gave me a level look. Is she skinny? Letitia is a full-figured, beautiful woman who has panache. She tried to smooth the material over her bulges. I admit, I do need some help. I've got your number. I'll have her give you a call. We returned to the floor. Pleased, I watched as a gentleman led Susan to the dance floor. During the break, John, an engineer I danced with earlier, pulled out a chair and sat across from me. I wondered if perhaps you'd like to go have a dessert and coffee after the dance. There's a restaurant close by with a great dessert menu. That would be great. Woohoo! My first date. The band sprang into a loud, peppy tune, foiling any further attempts to converse. I turned when a gentleman named Nathan tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to dance. After 2 hours of dancing, my swollen feet didn't want to squeeze back into my dress shoes. John showed up as I was placing my dance shoes into my shoe bag. We strolled into the parking lot, discussed whether to go in one car or 2. Nathan tagged my shoulder and stopped me. I thought you might like to dance some more at Hopper's. They have a groovin' band playing there tonight. Thanks, but I've had enough dancing for one night. My feet are tired. I smiled and turned to leave. You can slip your shoes off under the table, and I'll give them a little foot rub. You'll be back on your feet in a flash. Nathan offered a radiant smile. While he seemed like an interesting guy, his shaved head was a turn-off for me. I like to run my hands through a man's hair, not slide them over a shaved head. This gentleman, I gestured toward John, has already asked me to join him for dessert. Nathan frowned, his brows forming a V. Can I have your number? Sure. I dug in my purse and handed him one of my business cards. I turned to John. I prefer that we take 2 vehicles. I'll meet you there. John's mouth turned down with an expression of disapproval. His gaze flitted between Nathan and me. Shrugging, he turned and walked toward his car. Nathan cocked a brow. You sure you don't want to change your mind? He took a step closer. If I agreed to do something, I'd do it. If the situation was reversed, Nathan, would you want me to take off with someone else? I saw pink flood his face. Well, no. I turned and strode toward my car. The scowl on John's face disappeared when I walked through the door of the restaurant. I gave him a knowing smile. You thought I wasn't coming. Well, he was kind of pushy. John's ears glowed red, highlighted from behind by the track lighting. After we had settled into the booth situated in a corner next to a window, we ordered desserts. Mine was key lime pie. John expounded on his lifestyle for the next 10 minutes. Since I was single and able to save so much money, I decided to retire at age 55 while I could still enjoy my life. John forked a bite of carrot cake into his mouth. Sounds like fun. Aren't you afraid of running out of money? I own my own home, my car is paid off, and I have very few expenses. Placing a bite of pie in my mouth, I closed my eyes and felt the explosion of tart sweetness. I chewed, enjoying the texture difference between the crunchy graham cracker crust and the silky smooth feeling. Smiling, I thought, oral orgasm. Is it good? I opened my eyes to find John watching me. Very. Have you traveled much? I took a sip of decaf coffee to clear my palate. Not really. I tried to stay on budget. I gawked at him. Disbelief flowed over me. I preferred to work longer to travel the world than retire early to sit in my house. I waited for his retort. John didn't respond to my remark. The rest of the conversation centered on John's discussion of Argentine tango, a dance he learned when he lived in New York. I'd never heard of the dance, so the nuances of the discussion didn't impress me. The waitress placed the bill in front of John. He picked it up and frowned. Let's see, with a tip, it'll be $20.25. That would be about $10 apiece. Aghast, I turned and scowled at him and thought, you invited me for dessert and you want me to split the bill? John looked over at me with an expectant smile. Silence fell between us with a thud as the smile slid off his face. Of course, I asked you out. I'll cover the bill. Thank you. I smiled, but I'm sure it didn't reach my eyes. I'd given him my business card earlier and now regretted it. The damage wasn't too bad. It was my office number. My answering service would filter his call. John walked me to my car and with amazing speed moved in to kiss me and grab what he could. Feeling miffed, I turned my head so that his sloppy smooch landed on my cheek as I blocked his attempt to grab my breast with my elbow. I stepped away and thanked him for dessert. He was lucky I didn't hurt him. Given his frugal mindset, I didn't plan to take any chances on what he thought was his just due might be for $10 worth of dessert and coffee if I stayed longer. With speed comparable to a Formula One driver, I slid inside my car, locked my doors, and squealed out of the parking lot. So much for my first date in 20 plus years. I prayed the rest would be better as I wiped my wet cheek with a tissue. I sat at a red light, checking my rearview mirror to make sure I wasn't followed. My phone lying on the seat honked. Gina texted, "Call when you get home." Once settled in my PJs, I called Gina to give my report. "Good, you're home. Did you have fun?" I laughed. "Yes, Mama Gina. I had a great time dancing. I feel like my feet are twice their normal size and ready to split open." "I've had nights like that. Take some vitamin I." "What's that?" I rubbed my left foot and flexed my toes. "Ibuprofen." "Meet any nice men?" I lay down and fluffed the pillow behind my head. I'm surprised to say quite a few. A guy named Nathan tried to get me to meet him at another club to dance. He promised to rub my feet. Gina laughed. A man who can do a good foot rub is worth his weight in platinum. I didn't go because a retired engineer named John asked me out for dessert. Did you go? Yeah, but he tried to stick me with half the bill. Buffy jumped on the bed, circled a few times, and collapsed against my thigh with a sigh. Gina scoffed. I hope you're dropping that umungo frugale. I reached to pet Buffy. What? Cheapskate. He's history, not my type. Is dating always this weird, I asked. Sometimes it's weirder. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share, make comments. I enjoy any of those. Have a great day. Be safe and stay healthy.